Welcome to the MBN Solutions Boss and Data podcast. My name is Robin Huggins. I'm Client Services Director for MBN Solutions, a UK-based data talent and people solutions business. We solve talent problems in the data space by collaborating with a community of practitioners, managers, leaders, academics and enthusiasts. In each episode of our podcast, we take a deep dive into one of the topics currently challenging the data leaders within our community, with a special guest providing their input based on their background and experience in the data space. In this episode, our topic is future employability in the data sector. We are all acutely aware of the need for the data industry to attract a constant flow of new talent. However, a quick glance at any available data will tell us that there's a huge challenge in ensuring that the industry is able to educate, inspire and attract young minds during their journeys from classroom to employment. Joining me today to discuss the topic in more detail is a data leader who is the founder of the Data Inspiration Group and the Dig Data Programme, a virtual work experience offering that develops key employability skills to students across secondary and tertiary education. Prior to this, she co-founded Women in Data and worked as a data and analytics recruitment consultant for 12 years. She is a self-confessed maths phobe who is keen to inspire young minds on the exciting breadth of careers in the world of data and create a diverse pipeline of data literate future talent. Also, she's mum to Grace, who is way more important than any of that other stuff. Welcome to the show, Rachel Keane. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Rob. Thanks for inviting me to be on.
Oh, you're very welcome, mate. I am buzzing. It's taken a while, but we're finally doing a collaborative project together.
There you go. Well, good things come to those who wait, right, Rob?
Exactamundo. Rachel, as I've just alluded to, you and I have known each other for far too long to count now. Thanks very much for agreeing to be on the show. But for the benefit of those who don't know you, can you give us a bit of your story? Where do you come from? What's been your journey in data? How do you and I know each other? And what are you all about at the moment?
Wow, that's a really big question, actually, Rob. So, where do I come from? I guess, I'll very much just give this a touch on it. So, I'm a fashion grad, actually, from Nottingham-Trent. Graduated in 1999 with big plans to be a buyer for Karen Millen eventually. That was probably the only way I'd ever afford her clothes, I figured. But I absolutely wanted to work in that space and had a great university experience. I did a placement year, which saw me go to Hong Kong for a few months, which was wonderful. Came out like every kind of early 20s person and thought I'm going to rule the world until, unfortunately, I failed a maths test at a number of buy-in interview opportunities, and there it happened. Life just kind of crashed in front of me, and the question of what do I do now, which I think we've all felt and thought through about next steps. And like we all do, we all fall into different paths, different roles, but it saw me potentially spend a lot of time in sales, selling pretty much everything. I've obviously worked in recruitment. I've sold coffee machines, marketing stands, marketing courses, you name it, I've done it. And I guess for me, falling into data like most people do, and certainly in the recruitment space was such a privilege in 2009. Although obviously we were suffering from the crash, it was a great opportunity, at least for the next year or so, to really understand what data was, how companies were using it, how they're recruiting for it. Which was fantastic. And that saw me, spend 12 years doing that, which is where we met each other, of course. What goes on tour stays on tour. Rob and equally, yeah, we did become friends. And it was great, actually, because I guess one of my best memories is always bumping into you and your team at a number of client kind of briefings. It was a really competitive market, and we were kind of, in one respect, competitors, but equally we all also knew that there was enough work to go around, actually, and we were pretty confident that if we didn't place them, then you would, right? And that saw us also, I guess, pass on referrals of candidates if we couldn't place them, but we knew you had a certain contract, which was great. And I guess build a bit of an alliance, right? Which saw us go to a lot of Data IQ votes and awards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, again, great fun. And I've got nothing but fantastic memories of that. Actually, as you alluded, I co-founded Women in Data with Rasheen. which was brilliant experience. And now I've been running the Data Inspiration Group and specifically the Dig Data program for the last 2 years, 3 months, I think, not that I'm counting, which, as you said, is a virtual work experience offering for young people to get involved and understand about data, but more importantly than anything, to really build key employability skills, problem solving, data literacy, storytelling and presentation, which, as you well know, is invaluable for a career in data, but actually a really good grounding for any career vertical that students decide to undertake.
Right. Why the Data Inspiration Group? Why did you establish that business, and what is your core mission?
You're throwing them at me today, aren't you? Right, okay. So why did I set it up? Well, I guess, having placed lots of graduates into roles, I think, although I place people throughout their career, I absolutely love placing grads. There is nothing better than hearing that delightful squeal of, oh my God, I've got a job, because again, we've all been there. Like, I thank Crunchy for that. But if I had £1 for every time a grad said to me, let's say, for instance, they wanted to work in finance, or certainly in a sector that they had absolutely no interest in at all, but just felt that's where their kind of skills laid, I'd have paid this house off twice over. And I just found that really, really frustrating because, universities have got a number of employment engagement teams. Careers is really, top of their list. But how is it that data is Britain's best kept secret, right, at that level? And I was just like, this is nuts. So that was a frustration of, actually suffering that, I guess, as part of the recruitment process. But I then thought, well, if this is happening at this level, what's happening in secondary school? Because let's be honest, secondary school is where it all starts getting real. We start making option choices, we're taking GCSEs, we've got lots of choices in a short amount of time. And then throw into the mix that you've got, companies offering apprenticeships, then that message needs to be going out way earlier. So for me, I wanted to contribute to people not falling into data roles, which most people, and I'm sure you've heard that a million times over, to, I guess, educate young minds on the fact that data is something that's not going anywhere. You can't avoid it. It's in every single role. And actually, it's really powerful. And that you don't necessarily have to be somebody that's sat in this dark room, the stereotypical kind of person that we've all created, because there's so many different positions, so many different skills. It really is a career for all. And I think we all have a responsibility, if we've worked in data, to be able to shout about it and to educate about it.
Yeah, completely agree. And I remember too long ago now I remember Sanjeevan Bala and James Morgan coming with me to Oxford and Cambridge University way back in the day. The very first experience I'd ever had of going to university since I'd been at university, to try and speak to young minds. Why do you feel that there's a disconnect within the education system and between the education system and industry? What's gone wrong?
Again, another big question. So, well, I tell you what, I can actually use an example from yesterday, which I think is really apt, and I posted on LinkedIn earlier. So for those who don't know about the Dig Data program, I'll just tell you one of the products that we offer. Okay, so we work with a number of partners. We also go into schools and we deliver what we call a data day, which is what it says on the tin. The children use data to solve a business problem in a full school day. And yesterday saw us deliver to 55 year 9 students, which essentially they're sort of heading into age 14. And what that day consisted of was working on the CACI project. Is it important who turns on the Christmas lights? Good time of year, right? Every kid loves Christmas, which is brilliant. And it was who turns on the Christmas lights at Westfield? Should it be Elton John? Should it be Dua Lipa? Well, you know what kids are like. It's got to be Dua Lipa. It's got to be Dua Lipa. We're like, yeah, but we're here to actually find that out, kids. Right?
I would be very much Elton John, and my son would be very much Dua Lipa.
There you go. So we split the day into a number of tasks that I had to undertake each period. So that really saw them. They had a live briefing session with CACI, which was great. We then said, right, okay, this is the data. They had to analyse the data using Excel. They then had an opportunity to create what the different categories of shoppers look like. So there were things like affluent influencers, urban adversity, comfortable communities. So whilst they had a little bit of information about them, i.e. whether they're an Elton John or Dua Lipa fan, roughly how much money was in the household, a picture of their house, they had to create a profile for it, which was fantastic. So we gave them some tips of, what career do they have? Where do they go on holiday? How do they spend their time at the weekends? What brands do you think they particularly buy at Westfield? So it's a lot of research there, which was great, and some imagination, some creativity. And then essentially they had to put together a presentation that it had all of the profiles in it, as well as the recommendations from the analysis. And then they had to present their work. They were working in pairs to one of our data volunteers. So they had to leave the classroom with their laptop, do this thing for only 5 minutes. And then out of I think it was sort of 27 teams, we chose 3 winners. Okay. So that was brilliant. They then presented their work in front of the class. They all got a virtual work experience certificate. The winning team's got some match, right? So that's essentially what a day-to-day is. However, very few, I would say 96% of that classroom had never used Excel. Now, bearing in mind, they are now in the year that they will be choosing their options. So they'll be starting to think about what is it they want to do at GCSE. They had a number of lessons about computer safety, which is really, really important. They'd had, cyber stuff, really important. And they'd also played a coding game. But yet they'd never, ever had any exposure to Excel, which I hope you will agree is the foundation kind of everything. So we were absolutely bamboozled, and it was a massive, massive discussion point yesterday. The fact that, why is this not in the curriculum? How is it? How do we prepare young people from employment, which is exactly why we go to education, right? And go through that is how is education trying to prepare them in those key employability skills? And I guess it's a couple of things. Number one, this isn't for me to devalue what's going on at schools by any stretch of the imagination. I think teachers are absolutely phenomenal, what they do every single day. But equally, what happens is the fact that I just think the curriculum just doesn't prepare young people. They don't have any kind of direction on that. They don't have any input on that. But how are we going to prepare young people if we're not encouraging for the world of work? That's the first thing. And I also know that certainly in Key Stage 9, which is sort of 11 to about 14, a lot of those kind of computing classes are being kind of squeezed out, which is the first problem. Yeah. One of the other problems is the fact many teachers don't have exposure to spreadsheets and Excel either. Again, that's not, to sort of slag them off, that's fact. So it's a confidence issue as well as a knowledge issue. So that's the first thing. We all know that education and industry run at completely 2 different paces, okay? So... for me, it just feels like there are so many disconnects. There really needs to be some work on the curriculum. And I think included in that should be, the Excel sort of guidance and exposure. I think how to write a really, tangible email, in the right manner with the right wording, because back in the day we were taught how to do that with letters, yours sincerely, yours faithfully, etc. That's no longer in it. But communication to a potential employer or college or university is really, really, it's needed. So that's the problem right there. I think with industry is so busy going at a pace and evolving at such a pace that I think we only consider education when we need it, which is when we've got kind of... we're looking at undergrads and we're looking at apprentices, but we're not actually looking at investing in it seriously. There's a lot of people, you would have been to a conference and heard millions of times the expression, we need to start at the grassroots. But actually, whilst lots of businesses are starting with apprenticeships, etc., That's not grassroots.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And your point there about Excel, and I remember being bemused, however many years ago it was now, when I was doing a lot of work in academic liaison, involved with the Data Lab programme up here, and speaking to a number of different course leaders from a variety of different universities. Said, "No, we don't teach SQL." And I was like, "I'm sorry, you don't teach SQL?" "No, we don't teach SQL." And to me, that not teaching Excel at school is as bad as not teaching SQL at university. It's a basic foundation that should be taught to everybody, because why would you not? It just blows my mind sometimes. Yeah, there's areas of this that are obviously worth diving into a lot more deeper, but I'm going to slightly negatively frame the next question. What will be the consequence of a lack of action in this space? What do you think bad looks like?
Well, we're all striving to build a future diverse talent pipeline. That's not going to happen. First thing. Second thing is, people are going to continue falling into data careers, which is, terrible, because there's such a lack of talent already. That's only going to get worse. But above all of that, we're striving as a nation to be more data literate. And I know there's some, companies out there doing some incredible work with making their current workforce data literate. And that's really, really important. But actually, rather than always having to focus on your workforce, why don't we also focus on the young people coming through, and make that part of their toolkit? For me, that's what bad looks like. Bad looks like just problematic, because to affect change, you need to do something, and what we're doing at the moment just isn't right. And I think if we could have some impact from industry to people that are writing the curriculum, so you can have that connectivity, that would be a good start. But right now, there are so many challenges, and the impact of that will be, the fact that we won't build those future pipelines.
Okay, so that's the bad stuff.
On a lighter note.
Now on to the good stuff. Rachel, tell us more about your programme. How does it work for data leaders, for example?
Right, so this is the long one. Okay, so the Dig Data programme, as I mentioned, gives students across secondary and tertiary education the opportunity to gain virtual work experience. So it's an opportunity for young people to develop these key employability skills and gain virtual work experience with a brand that they may never have considered working for, or indeed in a career they would have never considered pursuing. We have 3 student cohorts, so I'll do the the English version, and then I'll translate it for you, Rob. So we've got 3 cohorts. We've got first step, which is years 7 to 9, which is your S1 to S3. Then we've got next step, which is years 10 to 13, which is essentially your S4 to S6. And then we have step up, which is university and higher education students. So we're working with just over 1,000 schools directly across the UK, 105 unis, and we've got in excess of 13,000 active members so far. So it's absolutely booming, and there's interest, which is brilliant. So what we do is we work with a partner to, I guess, lots of things really, help them build their future talent pipeline and to get their brand out there, to develop obviously key employability skills from a social value perspective, and equally give their staff an opportunity to volunteer their time to pass that kind of data baton on, and share that knowledge and skills exposure as well. So let's give it an example now. So we worked with Unilever recently, right? So bearing in mind we're working with children, so we want to make sure that we create a problem statement that is interesting and engaging for each one of those levels. So for first step, the year 7 to 9, their problem statement was, can you do Ben and Jerry's a flavour? Right, now, who knew how exciting ice cream and data could be? These kids absolutely, excuse the pun, lapped it up. And so that was their problem statement. And we create a scenario for each of them. So Ben and Jerry's have got 3 flavours of ice cream. They need to launch one of these flavours at an event in London this autumn. Looking at the data, which flavour should it be? and why, what's the recommended retail price, and should it be dairy or non-dairy. So what's actually happening here is you're asking these children for advice. Okay, you're saying, what do you think? So automatically they've got a little bit of power. They've completely forgotten about the fact that it's data or maths. It is also attractive to young people that perhaps aren't or don't think they're very good at maths, and or particularly focused on STEM. It's something that is inclusive for all, and that's really important to us. So that was the first step one. The next step, it was about Magnum ice cream and getting to know their customers. So looking at some limited edition flavours that had come in the summer. Should they kind of stay in the portfolio of flavours? Do they rival the current flavours, their best sellers? What's your advice? What can you tell us about our customers? So that was their one. And then for the step up cohort, their one again was, can you do Ben & Jerry's? A flavour, far more complex. But the difference here is that we create an approach that is data science focused for obvious reason, because we're going to continue to require that skill set, but one that's kind of more data strategy focused as well. So that's absolutely perfect for students that perhaps haven't looked at data, haven't worked with data, but have an interest in this area and appreciate that they need to upskill. So that's what happens. So we work with the client and probably volunteers of, I don't know, sort of 8 to 10 volunteers in their data team, and we put them into cohorts and we create these problem statements. We then go out and we advertise these events to all of our schools, all of our networks, etc. And students register individually to attend one live 45-minute briefing session, which is hosted outside of school hours, so it doesn't disrupt the timetable. And it gives the students the opportunity to actually meet Unilever's team, right? To actually be at a live briefing, which, as you well know, is happening more and more since COVID, right? Everybody's kind of liaising in this kind of hybrid method. So that's what the students do. They turn up, they're presented to by the Unilever team. They have a bit of an icebreaker, excuse the pun, kind of challenge. They then look at the problem. The Unilever team will tell them, give them some hints and tips of how they can solve it. They talk through the data and answer some questions on that. They talk about how they can present their findings, which can be any way they like, in a TikTok video, in a story, using Excel, whatever. Certainly for the younger years, we want to get them involved. And then they go off and work on the career challenge for a week. We give them everything they need in terms of resources to work on that. They come back to us and we send them an assessment video and a virtual work experience certificate. So for the younger years, it's a great opportunity for them to go, I really enjoyed that, let me do it again. Certainly for the sort of S4 to S6 or years 10 to 13, that's a really important time, okay, because they're looking to do personal statements, UCAS applications. They're starting to put CVs together. They're starting to think about, LinkedIn profiles, and certainly for the Step Up team as well. And it's a great topic to discuss at interview. And it's, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. It's a kind of a bit of a backhanded topic. So you can sort of admit that you're not very good at something from a really positive outcome. So it could be, only I would think about this. So it could be something like, I really thought that I've always wanted to work in telecoms. But actually, after doing the BT challenge, that, I enjoyed it, but I got far more enjoyment out of the ITV challenge. So that's the first thing. So it's given them that exposure to different industry sectors. Number two, it could be something like, I always thought I was great at Excel, but I can see now it needs a lot of development. Positive, but with a slightly negative feature. I didn't think I was creative, but I really enjoyed putting the recommendations together. What I need to build confidence now is presenting. Now, if you were to go to an employer and say, I know this kind of level of development because I've actually put it to the test outside of something in the curriculum, outside of something that somebody's going to mark, just on, my effort and my involvement, I would think, well, that's great. Thanks for being so honest. Right. Yeah. What we need to do now then is this, this, and this. So very clear message.
Yeah, I think it's blinding. It's absolutely brilliant. I'm thinking back to a conversation you and I had during lockdown, and you said, I've got this idea and I'm going to run with it.
Yeah.
And to see how far you've come and what you've been doing, it's take a bow. It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thinking back to the point that you made earlier, regarding what else is already going on out there. Where do you see big data fitting into established talent pool building programs? Where do you believe that you can make a difference in that already clouded landscape from an organisational perspective?
Well, I think there's a few ways. I mean, obviously, we just said, the students are gaining virtual work experience. Okay, so they're actually physically doing that. There's a couple of things. Number one, the partners get the opportunity to influence decision making at an early age by giving the students something positive and important to solve using data and building that key employability skills. Number two, I guess it's an opportunity for young people to use the virtual work experience as part of an application process, right? So that's a
Very, very
no-brainer.
pragmatic and very practical.
Exactly. And for something to do at an assessment a day or centre or whatever else. I guess one other thing that we do is we also host live online career panels, okay, and live online sort of recruitment briefings. So what that does is that gives the audience the opportunity to meet relatable role models currently on a journey which are probably 1 or 2 lily pads ahead of where they are. So you've got kids, Rob, as well as I do, okay, that if I was to say something to Grace, she'd look at me like I was nuts. If my still, if my niece says something to her, who's in her early 20s, she'll take that on board. So the nicest thing about this is to be able to meet and discuss with relatable role models and to learn about their journeys. So quite often we encourage, panelists that might be on an apprenticeship scheme, might be on a graduate scheme, somebody that might have failed their A-levels, had to do a foundation course. And we really do talk about the good, the bad and the ugly, because it's not, I don't find it, and I never have found it very positive when everybody looks like they're perfect, because that's just not life. Not everyone's journey is A to B, B to C, and it doesn't roll like that. And we know that. Okay. But as a young person,
that one day a year when everybody holds up the no wrong path sign.
Yeah.
And I know my path was a little windy
road.
Yeah. And I feel that one of the biggest assistances we can give to younger people these days is to say, look, some people's paths are straight and perfect. A lot of us, it's never been straight, it's never been perfect, but you all end up in the same destination. It's all good.
Well, exactly that. And, I'll put on an example last night. So my daughter came in last night with one of her friends who was in a real sort of state about lots of different things. Where is she going? What am I going to do? I don't have any friends. I don't have this. And I just put this positive spin on it. And I said to Grace, I should go into motivational speaking. She said, you are, aren't you? And I was like,
I thought you were already, mate. Yeah.
But one of the things I said to her was, don't think that this gets any easier, because it doesn't. You are just equipped with the years that go past with an opportunity to go, actually, I know how to deal with this. Does it still cut deep? Do you always know what to do? No, you don't. Okay. But you have the confidence in yourself and the courage to go forward with the life experience that you've had. So to paint a picture that everybody's perfect would be so unfair to an audience of people, especially when we're trying to build diverse talent, right? This is for everyone. Let's show everybody our scars. Let's talk about the wounds. Let's talk about the successes.
I think the scars point, and I think from my own personal perspective here, I think one of the most valuable lessons we can teach young people is it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
You will fail, but then you recover and you learn how to recover. And every failure is just another little step forward, because I think it's very unfair to paint a picture that suggests that everybody gets where they're going without failing, because you and I know, most people I know have failed and they've learned from failure how to get things right the next time.
Exactly that. There's nobody that lives a perfect life, that's for sure. You might have got your education choices right, you might have got this right, but I think one of the things that, for me, that I pull on is that, and we go back to, she wanted to be a buyer for Karen Millen, she failed the maths test. Is that the reason I started the Data Inspiration Group? Was it a draw that I pulled out the back of my head that I hadn't thought about, but actually I'd never really got over? Was I put on this, planet to make sure that I inspire young people to really think about, how you get over these types of things, actually showing them a different side to it, rather than if you're good at that, do that. If you're good at that, do that. Actually, there's so much inside you as a person that you offer that is aside from academia. which I'm very pleased to say, I think is now, part of the employment process and the recruitment process. People do actually care what you bring to the table, rather than before it was very much this, and like a tick box exercise. And if you love something, then you can, and you're passionate about something, you can get over any kind of hump in the road. Okay, because that is the kind of energy that pushes you over it.
So what's your next move? What can we expect next from the Data Inspiration Group?
World domination. Well, I think, what can you expect? More of the same, for sure, because I think, it's really important that we keep creating and building on this portfolio that we've got of these exciting career challenges. We need to be making sure we do that. What's next? That we start progressing and working with, there's 4,200 secondary schools in the UK. We're just over 1,000 in. We want to be working with all of those in the next couple of years. I'm really keen to really start thinking about how we can influence, or industry can influence, the curriculum after yesterday's episode, and actually really starting to affect that change from the get-go, because it's going to support industry, it's going to support young people, and it's going to stop all of us sort of banging our heads off the wall, right? Because if you can instill that change, however that looks, then that's gonna really help develop young people. And I think for me, that's the most important thing. There's never been such a rewarding place in my career, to be honest. And I guess one other thing, as cheesy as it sounds, is keep myself happy. Pushing forward and doing the right thing.
Nice. Okay, if I were a data leader wanting to use my superpowers for good and find out more about the Data Inspiration Group, how do I do it? How do I get in touch?
Oh, well, that's really simple, actually. So either look at me on LinkedIn and send me a DM, or it's Rachel, Rachel, at digdata.online. I would love to talk to more data leaders. I think it is very much a passion of data leaders. I just feel that it's such a significant lack of time that they have on their hands. But, the long game is making sure that we've got this talent coming through.
Amazing. Okay, final thoughts. If you could jump in the Wayback Machine and speak to yourself 5 years ago, what advice, based on what you know now, would you give yourself?
What advice would I give myself? Have the courage to always make yourself happy. Don't be afraid to walk away. And if it doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't.
Wise words, mate.
You weren't expecting that, were you? Rachel Keane said something wise. What?
Listen, as I said to you, mate, you remain one of my handful of data heroes. You're doing something, and you know how I feel about this, mate. We've been speaking about this for a decade. You're making a difference, and it's great to see you so happy.
Thank
Rachel,
you.
thank you so much again for taking the time to speak to me today. Thanks for sharing your passion, your knowledge, and your expertise on the theme of future employability in the data sector. I hope you, dear listener, have enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. Please do look out for the other episodes in this podcast series, where I'm joined by other special guests discussing topics relevant to today's bosses in data. Visit www.mbnsolutions.com for resources like our data salary survey, to watch recordings of our latest data meetups or podcasts, or to download our white papers, research and thought leadership. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram and Twitter for the latest news, views, opinions, and of course, hottest opportunities in the data space. Thank you and goodbye.